Welcome to my channel. Thank you guys for tuning in. On today's Seiko Originals, I've got two absolute legendary watches here. Two classics amongst the classics. So these watches, they are chronographs. And these are quite old. And possibly two of my most favorite Seiko chronographs out there. Now let's start off with the oldest. This is, they're both called the Seiko Daytona. This is a Mark 1, the 5 crown, and this is the Mark 2. So let's look at the Mark 1. Seiko Daytona, and number for this is SDWE23P1. Done a bit of Googling, and this was released around 1999. So what you're looking at here is a 21-year-old watch. Now, as I mentioned, this is called nicknamed the Daytona. Reason being, and this is what some people comment on as well. People say, why is it called the Daytona? It looks nothing like the Rolex Daytona. That's, for me, I think that's quite good that Seiko do that. When they do normally homage something, it's not a replica. So, they've took the design of the Daytona as some sort of inspiration. But this is the nickname that stuck with it. And it just took, I saw a picture of it a while ago, and I think I was after this watch for at least 8 months. And then I was obviously fortunate enough to see it. I bought it at a bargain price, because these, over the years, as you can probably guess, they have appreciated to quite a bit actually, for a second-hand model. As you can see, this one is not the best condition. The bezel's a bit marked up. The case back looks like someone had a fight with it. But overall, I was actually happy just to own a piece of history here. Now you might be thinking, what's the point of this review? Because even if it is good, it's gonna be, it's not like you can buy them brand new. They've been discontinued a long time ago. My generation, it's important that we know historically what watch has been there. Because I'm a Seiko nut, that's why I'm doing this review. I mean, I think people in their 50s, 40s possibly will remember this a lot more. But the younger generation that's getting into watches, I think it's important that this is sort of brought to people's attention. It is reviewed, and like I said, because this is one of my favorite watches, part of my collection, and so that's why I'm just talking about it. If you do see one, if you like it, grab it. They will be worth something. So let's get into it. Let's have a look. And this is what I love about the older Seikos, the older chronographs. Now compare them to the new school, new age stuff. There's not a lot of character left in the new stuff. They all look pretty similar. It's like the newer cars out there. It's hard to tell them apart. But with the older stuff, they really had that freedom to explore with different designs, make them unique, if you want to call it. It's hard to find a unique watch, obviously, in the watch game. And as far as divers go, again, divers, it's the same design time and time again. You get small variations. So with the chronos, the old school chronos, this was the actual benefit for me. And the chronos that I do have in my collection are, I'd say, quite different, different designs. So this one being the Mark 1 Daytona, the caliber is a 7032, very old quartz caliber. What that actually means is you get an alarm function and a 30-minute timer. And I'll just press the chrono down here. You can see that sweeping chronograph hand. It's a lovely feature. And what you notice with this is, with all the 7032s, they had the 5 crowns. And then when they moved on, they sort of consolidated a couple of the functions into just three crowns. So with this, you've got the pusher on the top right, which initiates the chronograph, start and stop. And then to reset it, it's the one on the opposite side. Now, I quite like that because if you were to hold a stopwatch, that's exactly how you hold it. So from here, and give it a quick reset. Then you've got your normal crown. So you pull it out, change the date, change the time. You got your seconds sub-dial there. And at the bottom, you got your alarm, which works by this small hand here. You can hear that there, ready to go. And you set that alarm individually, which is quite good. And this is a reset pusher here. You have got what look like screw down crowns, but they don't actually move. It's just for aesthetic purposes. And of course, you've got 100 meters resistance. This also comes with, which is one of the nicest things about this watch and what makes it quite unique to me, is this diver's bezel. Now this bezel, this old watch, it sounds extremely ratchety. I suspect the bezel gasket is probably worn and might need changing. What I have done with this, I've changed the hardlex crystal to a new hardlex crystal. You can see that, flawless. And yeah, really retro design. It just looks solid, and I think it looks quite manly. Love the design. Few specifications. We're looking at a 44mm diameter. That's from here to the crown guards, and you're looking at a 11.8 or 11.5 mil thickness, and your lug to lug is about 48 millimeters, and your lug distance between here, you're looking at about 31 and 22 the actual lug width. Now I always make a point to mention this because what I have found in my experience is when you've got a decent width, it sits really nice on the wrist. It gives it some comfort. Obviously you've got more surface area where the watch can sit. And with these watches, when you do wear them, it's like you actually haven't got them on, just because they just fit so snugly. Let's have a closer look at the dial. Now, I'll read reviews about these. I'll see what people think. People mention it's a busy dial. For me, dials can look busy, but I don't think, what I'm trying to say here, if you've got features to a watch, then I don't think it's a busy dial. You just appreciate for the features. So if you have a closer look here, you've got your tachymeter around the side, and you've got sub dials. And I love the accent. Let's move this out of the way. So these red accents on the sub dial, I think that's fantastic. Something different, and that takes it away from being so busy because you've got something to focus on, and you've got a different hand. And then for your alarm, you've got the blue indicators on the 12, 3, 6 and 9, and your second hand. And you can see they've got this lovely disc, metallic disc, that separates them. So if you look at it closer, it's actually, I don't think it's a busy dial. I think it's a very functional dial. Now, unfortunately, when I change the hardlex, you'll notice this will stop working now. Took the movement, I put it back in, and for some reason the second hand is playing up. See it go back. So I don't know what that is. If anybody does know, please let me know. I might try to find something on some forums or find a movement for it. It shouldn't be too expensive, but you know. You can see you got loomed indices here. Loomed buttons applied, and this tachymeter ring, it's a separate chapter ring to the dial. The minute track is printed on the dial, and you've got loomed hands. Let's have a quick look at how good the loom is on a 20-year-old watch. Right, as you can see, it is a bright loom. There's not a lot of it, but it is bright enough. And you'll find that the same story on the Mark II as well. You also have the chronograph hand that is loomed, so let's give that a little, and you can see that focus. Now obviously, because it isn't a diver, it doesn't need to be, the loom does not need to be so prominent, and I believe this is more than sufficient. So that's the Mark I. Let's hit the Mark II. And again, if you just have a look at it, it is more or less exactly the same. The difference with this is, as you can see, it's missing the 2 crowns from the side. That's because the movement now, the caliber now is a 70-62. So it's got the same functions, it's just they've been consolidated into 2 pushers, and what they do: start, stop, reset. And if you want to move any, like the alarm, you go through a settings sort of menu. So you hold the first pusher here, let's call it A, you hold that till I'll do it quickly here. So what you've got to do, pop out the crown, hold A. Now you see that flip there, so now you can change that minute subdial there, the timer subdial, yeah, minutes lapse, sorry. So if you hold that, the B button there, now you're into a reset. So A acts like mode, go into different modes, and B is the settings. So we can center that now back to 0. So you hold that again. Now your chrono hand's moved. So you hold B again. Now your chrono hand is free for you to adjust. What happens time to time, I don't know why, is sometimes they can get misaligned. So it's always handy to know this, and it's actually not broken. I've previously bought a watch, a chronograph, where someone thought that was broken, so I got it quite cheap. And then same thing with the alarm, you hold it, now the alarm's spinning around. Now with the alarm, you can actually use it as a dual time zone, which is brilliant. If you don't use it as an alarm, you've got a added functionality. The watch actually functions like a GMT. Or what I normally do, I leave it in line with the actual time, and what that will do, that will actually move with the watch. So then just press it in and it's going. Similar looks. I think the color on this, it looks like a dark blue-ish, but it is black, but this is just a darker black. So bezel, same ratchety bezel again. I suspect it's probably the bezel gasket. And what I have done with this, because I scratched the glass up, so I purchased a domed hardlex. So now that adds some depth to this dial. And again, the same features, the same quality on the dial. Your subdials, your accents on the subdial. The thing with this is I struggle finding information on this. I don't know when it was produced, but I'm assuming, obviously a few years after that. So I'd say maybe a, I don't know, 12-year-old watch, if I'm wrong. If anyone does know when these were produced and these came out, please let me know in the comments, and that'll be much appreciated. And there's one thing I have noticed, if you look on my previous reviews of the chronographs, they went in, Seiko did actually go in with the quality on the actual dials and the workmanship. So you've got applied indices, polished surrounds, you know, you've got, take a look at the hands, very beautifully executed. If you look at the date window, it's embossed and it's got a, you know, polished silver border, crisp printing. So they went in, Seiko did absolutely go in. Specs on this one, in terms of measurements, so this is the diameter is still 44. If you measure it to the crown guards, minus the crown guards, it comes out about 42. Thickness, this comes out about 13. Now I suspect that might be possibly because of the slight dome. Your lug to lug's 49, so it's a mil bigger. Lug width is 22, but the actual width of the lugs is 31. And for the added comfort, so let's try them on. So you can see with what I mentioned with the width, this watch sits very comfortably, and you know, the design on this, I tell you what, it fits in. It doesn't stand out, it does not look old at all. So I'd say this design is is timeless retro design. This comes with the original bracelet. I do have an aftermarket bracelet lying around, so I'll try it on the Mark 1. Well, I've just kept it on the leather just to keep it a bit different. And it looks good on the leather as well. So both watches sit really comfortably, and I did mention about prices. So I have seen some of these watches sell for as low as 90 and as upwards as, I'd say, around the 200 mark. And I really do love the design. Like I said, very retro, very manly watch. You know, and these are on-the-go watches. You just pick them up and go. Obviously, I love my autos, but if you are a collector and you have more than a couple of watches, then just for convenience sake, it does really help. And just to pick up a watch, and you know, they keep near enough perfect time. I mean, these watches, apart from that one, because I've been messing with it and I've messed with this, but to be honest, I set these about 5-6 months ago, and they were accurate to within a second, and that's all the quartz Seikos I own. So brilliant accuracy, and that's the pros when it comes to watches. When it comes to the quartz watches. I'm not a fan of the plain quartz watches, I gotta say this, you know, but I do like the chronographs, and I think I only have chronograph quartz watches. So unfortunately I did mess up the second there, so it's not keeping time. I need to get that fixed. But yeah, anyway, I hope you like this. If you didn't know about these watches, now you do. For ones that do know about them, let me know what you think in the comments. As always, like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you for watching.